If one day the sun suddenly disappeared, the Earth would not die immediately in darkness, but would go through a horrifying journey of torment to the extreme of freezing and loneliness. How long could humanity hold out before the very parent star becomes the greatest crematorium in the history of the universe? The disappearance of the sun is not only a dry physical assumption, but a brutal separation between the Earth and the source of life, making us suddenly realize how small and lonely we are in the eternal void. Imagine, at a fateful moment, when the sun suddenly vanishes, everything on this planet will continue in carefreeness for exactly 8 minutes and 20 seconds more. That is the final time light still belongs to us, before eternal darkness engulfs every corner of civilization. When the last ray of light fades, the sky is no longer a hopeful blue, but turns into a deep, dense black so terrifying. Just 10 minutes later, even the moon, the loyal companion, will leave humanity's sight, because its silver light is merely a borrowed reflection from the lost parent star. But darkness is only the beginning of the nightmare. When the invisible thread of gravity is cut, the Earth no longer orbits a warm center, but becomes a drifting ghost ship thrown into vast space at a terrifying speed. In that deadly silence, the temperature begins to free fall. After just 1 hour, the planet's protective magnetic field weakens, the ionosphere collapses, leaving the Earth exposed to the cold cosmic radiation. A week passes, the hope of a familiar sunrise becomes a luxury. Trees, the lungs of the planet, begin to collapse without photosynthesis, leaves covering the ground frozen at -10 degrees Celsius. Humanity now faces a harsh truth. We are not only losing light, but also losing the protection of a spiritual father. Uh, After 1 month, when the oceans completely freeze and the temperature reaches -20 degrees Celsius, all human survival efforts in shelters or space stations are only faint breaths against the harshness of the universe. The Earth continues drifting into the void, carrying the remnants of a once brilliant era, now just a cold black block of ice wandering among the stars without ever finding a destination. Amid the chilling loneliness of a frozen future, we suddenly realize that the presence of the sun is not something inevitable, but the result of a glorious birth journey from the earliest days of the universe. To understand the value of the fading light, we must go back in time to 4.6 billion years ago, when the Milky Way was still a primitive and chaotic region. At that time, all we had was a giant molecular cloud, a vast veil of hydrogen and cold dust, drifting aimlessly in the void. But the universe does not favor eternal stillness. A nearby aging star chose to end its life cycle with a violent supernova explosion, sending powerful shockwaves into that cloud of gas and dust. This fateful push awakened the dormant gravity, causing matter to collapse, rotate, and fall toward the center god. Within 10,000 years, a blink in cosmic time, a flattened stellar disk formed, nurturing a young protostar at its center. That was a turbulent gestation phase, where pressure and temperature were compressed relentlessly to suffocation. And then a physical miracle occurred. Hydrogen began to transform into helium, releasing an immense source of energy. At that moment, the heart of the solar system began its first beats, illuminating an entire region of darkness and providing warmth to future seeds of life. It was not just a chemical reaction, but the moment when life gained a foundation to emerge from the ashes of previous stars. When the nuclear fire ignited at the center, it not only illuminated space, but also began a great purification to shape the forms of the worlds we inhabit. In that blazing, flattened stellar disk, a silent yet fierce differentiation of matter took place under the influence of the young sun's solar wind. Light and fragile elements such as hydrogen and helium were blown far away, drifting to the cold outer regions to gather into great gas giants, solitary and mysterious. In contrast, in the scorching inner region, only the most resilient materials, heavy metals and rocks, could endure, and after millions of years of collisions, they bonded into small but solid rocky planets. Our Earth was born that way, from the most resilient fragments, fortunate to find a perfect position where water could embrace life. Finally, as the storm of gas and dust settled, a stable system emerged, where each celestial body found its own orbit in a solemn mechanical dance over billions of years. After the blazing fury of the expansion phase, when all energy has been exhausted to the last drop, the sun will cast off that radiant shell into the void as a final farewell to the universe. It is a moment of absolute stillness, when once glorious layers of matter are released, forming a luminous planetary nebula like glowing ribbons in the vast darkness. At the center of that melancholic beauty, all that remains of the great parent star is a small, dense, and cold core, a white dwarf. With a size only comparable to the Earth but carrying the weight of an exhausted god, it no longer burns through nuclear reactions but only radiates a faint heat that gradually cools over billions of lonely years. The solar system now becomes a silent astronomical graveyard, where the remaining planets, if not consumed, will continue to orbit a dim light in despair. The era of humanity, with all its love, hatred, great dreams, and passionate songs, is ultimately just an infinitesimal dash in the chronicle of the stars. We realize that life has never been a given, but a brief privilege granted by a random and finite physical cycle. When the white dwarf finally fades into a silent black dwarf, it is not only the end of a planetary system, but also a profound reminder of our humility before the endless flow of time. Each of us, in the end, is merely stardust trying to find meaning in a brilliant moment before dissolving into the eternal void. The journey from nothingness to the destruction of the solar system is not just Adri physics problem, but the most tragic epic of existence. We have seen a sun born from the ashes of dead stars shining brilliantly, nurturing life for billions of years, only to ultimately succumb to the cruel law of time. The fading of light, the expansion into Ard Giant, and the quiet end beside a cold white warfall remind us of our true place. Humanity, with all its vast civilization, is in fact only temporary travelers on a small rocky planet. In the vast and ruthless universe, life is not something inevitable, but a finite miracle counting down every second. Finitude is the gift of the present. The greatest lesson the universe conveys is the law of impermanence. Every entity, whether as grand as a star or as small as a grain of dust, has a beginning and an end. Instead of worrying about distant things, learn to enjoy the morning sunlight, the breath, and the loved ones right now. Because in the flow of billions of years, the moment you are living is unique and will never repeat. Live with purpose. When we know that everything will eventually turn into cosmic dust. Twilight goof trivial desires, anger, and attachment to focus on creating meaningful spiritual values and unconditional love. If you could choose only one place to take shelter if this appeared, would you stay on Earth or venture into the unknown space? Leave your opinion in the comments so we can discuss together. If you enjoy content exploring the depth of the universe like this, do not forget to subscribe to support us with more motivation to continue the journey of decoding the next mysteries of space.